So I have the Scythe Legendary box, I have the Wind Gambit, I have Invaders from Afar, I have the Rise of Fenris, I have this amazing little Scythe money holder with the money inside, the metal coins, I have the metal mechs, I even have the realistic resources, okay? I've got all these different things, but I didn't have the modular board. Is the modular board enough to make a super fan like me crazy about Scythe again? I'm already crazy, but crazier. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dice Odyssey. I'm Kaz, and today we are talking about the Scythe modular board. We're going to do a review of that, okay? And as you can see, see here, I've got some of the pieces to it, some of the layouts for the modular board. We're going to get into more of that here in a moment. We're going to have a few things slide here, but you can get an idea of what the modular board kind of looks like. I got some blank space up here with some printed spaces as well. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to kind of give you just a show of what it looks like. I'm going to do a top-down camera, come back with my final thoughts. Understand, to start with, and most of the people who watch this channel understand, Scythe, I used to not like this game, and this was my major slow burn game. It took me several games to really start liking it, and it is now my #1 game. So understand, I am going into this with some bias, but did I have some reservations as well? We'll find out. All right, so this is the board in general, and you've got these faction tiles that I haven't pulled every one of them out. I've just got a few of them out here just to give you an idea. But you've got locations that you can stick them on, okay? And you'll basically do the general setup what the rule book tells you. Let's take a look here. You've got these double-sided tiles, okay? If you take a look, you got your lakes there and the other normal things. You flip them over, and they're generally a little bit different, okay? To a certain extent. Some things are just changed up, and each tile is pretty much made up that way. Now, one thing to keep in mind here is if you see a river right here and it's connected to a lake, that's just considered part of the lake. You cannot jump across it unless, of course, you have, you know, the lake hopping ability that you've got with a couple of the factions, like the Nordic or Polania. As you notice, I've got them out here. Metal mechs. Also, one other thing to keep in mind, whenever you're putting the tiles out and you're flipping them and moving them around to figure out how to place them, you cannot start a faction location next to a lake. So if you find that you're doing that, you can just go ahead and flip it. And of course, you can move the tiles around however you need to get that working right. But like right now, this faction location does not have a lake attached to it, so that is considered illegal. Now this one, if this lake's right here, and let's say you had a faction location, it's not a problem because you've already got that faction, or that village in between there, okay? And as you notice, right there, you can see where that kind of slid over that river just a little bit. So you do have to be careful to make sure that this doesn't slide and you forget where everything is. One other thing to keep in mind, you can also play this with the Rise of Fenris campaign. I am not going to go into details about that. The rule book will detail that out. If you want to know anything about it, I don't want to spoil anything if you haven't played it, which, if you love Scythe, what's wrong with you? You should play that. One other nice thing is you've got a bunch of different bonus structure tiles here that are brand new, and they do correspond, obviously, with this board. So that's another nice little neat addition to this in particular. You know what's so cool, too? I just discovered this. The coins turn this like into a little vehicle. It rolls. Anyway, that beyond all that, I'm going to go ahead and get into this. Here's my pros, my cons. I'm going to list those, and then I'm going to get into my final rating. Understand, some of the pros and cons could very well be subjective. Some of them could be objective. The pros, okay, I've got a few of those. All right. Number one, this makes Scythe, in my mind, infinitely more replayable than it already is. Now, to a certain extent, it was very replayable because of the different the different faction boards and the different action boards being different, and the different combinations that you can get. Now, granted, there have been some banned combinations now because some of them seem very OP and very imbalanced. But the fact is that you know, that was something that made Scythe very replayable. You know, depending on what factions were in the game and what the combinations were, Yeah, it was awesome. The only thing I will say is, though, is that there were times that it seemed like people could game the system. And I don't mean game in the typical sense. I mean game in the sense that if they got a particular faction, most of the time, even if they didn't have a particular board, it didn't matter what the board setup was for their player board, they were able to figure out and map out exactly how their actions would go. Now, granted, if you want to try to stop them, you could come over and combat them, stop them just a little bit, slow them down some. But these type of people are just amazingly good at this type of game. They just are, and they're almost unbeatable at times. One of my friends, Riley, is such a person. Love Riley to death. But he was very difficult to take on in the game of Scythe. People had to be very unorthodox to stop him or at least slow him down. And it was hard to be competitive against him. It just is. You know, he's so good at this. He can map out 10 moves ahead. I can map out several moves ahead too, but he's just got a, clockwork mind. And so anyway, I say all that to say this Scythe modular board really helped us be more competitive against a player like him. And I'm sure some of you have players in those game groups that are very much like a Riley, and the fact is that this helps with that. This changes the layout so much at times that no matter where he's playing, very likely it's going to be a lot easier to be competitive against him. That doesn't mean he can't figure these things out even if they change up, or a player like that, but it definitely helped us be more competitive. The last game we played against him on this board, I came very close to beating him. And that's rare for me. I mean, I can beat other people at this game, but Riley's just a very tough opponent, And so, I'm not saying I'm the greatest Scythe player, but I love Scythe, and I can typically map my moves out pretty well. Another pro is that this right here, the Wind Gambit expansion with the airships was great. I mean, it was fun. It's not a necessity, but it's fun. It's a good expansion. In my opinion, now some people may disagree with me, I think that the modular board makes that expansion even more necessary. And let me tell you why. Because sometimes these lakes are so gathered together in different spots, and sometimes it is a little bit harder for you to get off of where you start in terms of getting your engine up and running and actually moving out. Now, again, it depends on the spot. That with the airship expansion, it just opens the board up even more. Granted, the original Scythe board, it did that for as well. I just think it tends to come into play a little bit more usefully, if that's a word. It tends to be more useful on a board like this where you're not quite sure how the layout's going to be. You're not quite sure where the river's going to connect into those lakes, and it's going to be harder for you to cross. And let's just be honest, there's only a few factions in the game that actually have not the river walk, the lake walk, the submerging and being like a submarine or a boat. And I think that the airship expansion really opens this game up even more. Now, do I have any cons to this? Yes, I do. There are some cons. Number one, I totally understand this, and I really understand that it does drive the cost up more, and I can understand Stonemaier want to keep their costs low for people. But I do not like at all the fact that these do not have recesses in them. The board does not have recesses. I hate that, actually. I hate the fact that, if I get my tiles on there, occasionally it'll move, and you could cover up a spot or a river or something. It could move just ever so slightly, and you're not sure what's underneath that spot. Sometimes you don't even notice it, And occasionally I'm having to sit here and fix these tiles on the board. I'm kind of noticing it more sometimes than other players at my table, where they might have gotten confused and go, wait a minute, I thought there was a river there. Oh, the tile moved, And so, I hate that. I hate that. It's not a deal breaker, but I hate it. You know what I mean? And now that I've played Tapestry, and they have those frosted covering things where the tiles, where you've got things that are sitting on these player boards that have frosting on them, that frosted feel to them, and they don't really move. That extra texture keeps your buildings and things from moving. I wonder if they could have done kind of something similar with this. I don't know how much it would drive your cost up. And I don't know. Maybe they didn't think of it at that time. Maybe that was specifically while they were developing Tapestry. But now I'm kind of like, wow, I was a little bit, spoiled with that, And I understand indentions can drive cost up like crazy, and they can actually warp boards from what I understand over time. So I get the reasons why not. I just wish that was not an issue. Now, here's the other thing. Maybe they could have cut these parts of the board out and left them just open. You know, there's no board there at all for you to sit on. But I think that also could drive the integrity of the board down itself. So it's not an easy fix, I get it. Another minor con is the fact that I have the extension for the larger side of the baseboard, okay? I love how it fills up a bigger table. It's not great for this size table necessarily, but there are tables that I play on occasionally that are, you know, a lot bigger than this. And I like the fact that it's easier for people to reach across and do different things when it comes to that extra size of the extension and the hexes and everything else. So I kind of wish they had released a secondary version of this alongside it somehow, maybe even included in the main pack. You know, 2 boards, pick which one you want to use. So it's a minor con. I kind of wish they had done that, but again, that drives costs up, and maybe the bigger board isn't something a lot of people play on, but I really enjoyed having that bigger board, you know. Another con is this is going to be a highly imbalanced game at times. Now, that could be a great thing for some people because it gives people, like I said, it goes back to evening the playing field out for much more experienced players. But it's going to be a con at times because depending on the faction and the player board and everything else, it is going to be very difficult for some people to move out and get their engine going, like I said. I had a friend of mine in one game that was kind of bottlenecked in for a little bit, and he was having a hard time moving out, especially because of where other players were starting, the resources that were available to him, all of these different things that were playing a factor in that. So it took him a lot longer to get going, but like I said, experienced players may be able to work their way around it a lot more. Again, this is a map made for more experienced players. So where do I sit on a final recommendation for this? I'm going to be a little two-faced on this. I'm going to be of two minds on everything, right? I flip a coin kind of thing. On the one side of the coin, I think this is an amazing expansion for experienced players and lifestyle players. You know, if this is the kind of game that you're playing week after week after week after week, and you can map the normal board out so easily, and the player board, no matter what you get, it's still going to be easy enough for you to map and to deal with. This is going to be almost an essential expansion, in my opinion, because this just changes the game up so much and adds so much replayability and adds so much imbalance, I guess you could say, in a good way, you know, that it levels the playing field out between players, like it did for us in some cases, that I think this is going to be a highly essential expansion for those that are massive Scythe players, okay? And we play this quite a bit, and many of us at the table absolutely thought this expansion, this board was amazing for that, okay? Barring some of the cons that we had, this board is something that I highly recommend to experienced players. Now, for newer players or once in a blue moon, I might play Scythe, you know, every 6 months, I wouldn't recommend this board, not at all. I really think this is something that you have to sit down and play a lot. Again, my own personal opinion, and play a lot to justify buying this. I really do. I would not introduce a new player to this at all. Again, unless they just wanted to and they didn't care. And they knew they were going to be confused and frustrated. Because this map can be frustrating if you don't know what... If you've only played once or twice, it can be frustrating. Let's just be honest here. So, but overall, I personally love it a lot. My cons aside, it is something I would love to pull out a lot. And the fact that it levels the playing field between amazingly good players like Riley, for example, and it really helps us be more competitive. That's awesome. That's awesome for us. So highly recommend if you are an expert Scythe player and a lifestyle gamer. Do not recommend getting this if you don't play Scythe a lot at all. So that's going to be my review. What about you? If you got a chance to play on the modular board, what did you think? Do you agree or disagree? Hey, opinions are welcome here. Just be respectful. You know what I mean? Anyway, thank you so much for watching the Dice Odyssey. And please like and subscribe if you like the content so you can get a notification when we're going to put out any more content. And hey, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we really appreciate you. You have a blessed day and game away. This video is brought to you by Fallen Dominion Studios. Check out their website at fallendominionstudios.com.